Picture it. You step out of your front door on a Tuesday morning to grab the mail. Standing between you and the driveway is an 800-pound grizzly bear. You freeze. Your heart hammers against your ribs. But the bear doesn't rear up. It doesn't roar. And critically, it doesn't run away. It just blinks, ambles over to you, and nudges your shoulder out of mild curiosity. It treats you exactly the way a golden retriever treats a fire hydrant. An object. A minor point of interest. Now, multiply that interaction across the globe. Coyotes sleeping on park benches, packs of wolves casually walking through a crowded grocery store parking lot, completely unfazed by the screaming people or honking cars. What happens to human civilization if the animal kingdom simply never learned to be afraid of us? To understand the immediate chaos, you have to look at the invisible shield we currently live behind. Every day, you are protected by a global psychological barrier. Animals stay in the woods because they are terrified of humans. We are the most lethal persistence hunters the planet has ever seen, and our ancestors spent tens of thousands of years teaching every living creature that standing near a two-legged ape means death. That fear is the only reason suburbs can exist. Take that fear away, and the geography of human settlement completely collapses. Cities wouldn't sprawl outward into neat, unprotected rows of houses with manicured lawns. They couldn't. If millions of fearless herbivores and predators viewed our neighborhoods simply as warm, predator-free environments with easy food, our infrastructure would have to change overnight. You wouldn't have a wooden fence around your backyard. You would need concrete walls, electrified perimeters, and heavy steel mesh over every window. Urban planning would look less like modern Los Angeles and more like medieval fortresses. When early human settlements faced constant threats, they built inward, elevating their homes and heavily fortifying the perimeter. In a fearless world, every modern city is a walled compound, but the walls are just the beginning. The real crisis hits our food supply. Right now, a single farmer can manage hundreds of acres of corn or wheat, relying on scarecrows, loud noises, and the occasional gunshot to keep wildlife at bay. In a world without fear, a gunshot is just a loud noise. It means nothing to a herd of 300 wild boars. They would simply walk right past the farmer and strip the field bare. Our entire agricultural model relies on the assumption that wild animals will run away when we yell at them. If they don't, farming becomes a military operation. Crops would have to be grown in massive, enclosed greenhouses or heavily guarded compounds. The price of an apple would skyrocket, because every piece of food would have to be physically defended from animals that refuse to back down. That assumes you can even transport the apple. If animals lack the instinct to flee, the global transportation network instantly paralyzes. Right now, highways work because the overwhelming noise and momentum of traffic act as an acoustic deterrent. Deer and moose occasionally wander onto roads, but their instinct is to sprint away from the roaring metal machines. Remove that instinct. A herd of elk finds the warm asphalt comfortable and simply lies down across 4 lanes of interstate. Honking does nothing. Shouting does nothing. You have a multi-ton biological roadblock that has to be physically moved. Trucking routes would face daily, unyielding gridlock, breaking down the fragile supply chains that keep supermarkets stocked. And it gets worse when you look up. The aviation industry spends billions of dollars every year on wildlife hazard management. Airports use sirens, lasers, and controlled explosives to scare birds away from runways and engine intakes. But what if a flock of geese simply doesn't care about the sirens? If birds never learned to fear human machinery, bird strikes wouldn't be a rare emergency. They would be a daily, unavoidable catastrophe. Air travel as a reliable global system would cease to exist. You cannot run a commercial airline if a flock of seagulls decides the runway is a perfectly safe place to sunbathe. Then comes a threat you can't just build a wall to keep out: the disease factor. The separation of human and wild animal populations acts as a natural quarantine. We occasionally cross paths, but for the most part, wildlife stays out of our living rooms. If animals treated cities like extensions of the forest, that quarantine vanishes. Raccoons, bats, and feral dogs would constantly mingle in high-density human areas. They would sleep on apartment balconies and drink from city fountains. The biological exchange would be non-stop. Zoonotic diseases, pathogens that jump from animals to humans, would multiply exponentially. Rabies, avian flu, and unknown viral strains would rip through urban centers constantly. Our healthcare systems would collapse under the sheer volume of cross-species contamination. But here's where we have to look backward to see the real structural shift. How would we have even gotten to this point point. If animals never developed a fear response to humans, our entire evolutionary timeline warps. Think about man's best friend. The domestication of the dog is one of the most pivotal moments in human history. We brought wolves to our fires specifically to act as an early warning system against other predators. But if a saber-toothed tiger doesn't care about a barking dog, the dog's utility drops to zero. We might never have domesticated them. The intricate bond between humans and canines, born out of mutual survival and perimeter defense, would simply never have sparked. And without that defense, human migration halts. When our ancestors walked out of Africa and spread across the continents, they survived by dominating the landscape. They pushed apex predators away using fire, weapons, and coordinated noise. They created a bubble of fear around their camps. If fire and spears only killed the animals they hit, but did absolutely nothing to scare away the rest of the pack, humans would have been trapped. We wouldn't have crossed the Bering Land Bridge, or settled the frozen plains of Europe. The sheer density of fearless predators would have locked early humans into highly defensible, isolated pockets. We would never have become a globally distributed species. We actually know exactly what this fearless behavior looks like. You don't have to guess. You just have to look at isolated ecosystems like the Galapagos Islands. Animals there evolved without natural land predators. If you walk up to a marine iguana or a blue-footed booby, they don't flinch. They lack the neurological blueprint for a flight response. They just stare at you. That is what a fearless animal looks like. Now transplant that exact behavior into an apex predator, like a Bengal tiger or a pack of hyenas. If they lack the flight response, humans are no longer an intimidating force to avoid. We are just another slow, incredibly soft protein source wandering around their territory. But the biological math of survival is brutally simple. A predator doesn't avoid humans because we taste bad. It avoids us because our ancestors taught them we are lethal. Remove that learned terror, and the predator's brain simply registers us as calories. We do not have claws, we lack armor, and we are painfully slow. Therefore, we are easy prey. But what makes this truly catastrophic is our density. Without fear acting as a psychological barrier, a human city isn't an intimidating fortress. It is the most densely packed, defenseless buffet on the planet. Predators wouldn't just occasionally wander into our towns out of curiosity, they would actively hunt us, treating our suburbs as designated feeding grounds, simply because nothing in their instincts told them no. But here is where the assumption flips. The immediate thought is that a fearless animal kingdom would destroy humanity. The truth is actually much darker. If animals never learned to fear humans, they wouldn't conquer us. We would have completely annihilated them. Think about it. The only reason large mammals, bears, wolves, lions, elephants, still exist alongside human civilization is because they learned to hide from us. During the Pleistocene epoch, when humans first expanded across the globe, dozens of giant animal species went extinct. The archaeological consensus points to a brutal learning curve. The animals that survived were the ones that genetically adapted to be terrified of humans and run the other way. Fear became their primary survival mechanism. If a pack of wolves refused to leave a human settlement, humans wouldn't just pack up and move. They would systematically eradicate the wolves. If animals didn't naturally avoid us, our ancestors would have been forced to view every single wild creature as a direct, unyielding threat. You can't coexist with a fearless bear that constantly walks into your kitchen. You have to kill it, and then you have to kill its cubs, and then you have to clear the entire forest of bears just to ensure your children can sleep safely. A world where animals don't fear humans is a world where wild animals no longer exist. We wouldn't be living in a Disney movie of perfect harmony, nor would we be living in a post-apocalyptic wasteland dominated by beasts. We would be living on a completely sterilized planet. Every creature larger than a house cat would have been hunted to extinction centuries ago out of sheer necessity. The forests would be empty. That fear, as inconvenient or sad as it sometimes seems, is actually a peace treaty. It is an ancient, unspoken agreement written into their DNA over thousands of years. They stay in the shadows, and in return, they get to survive. The terror we instill in the animal kingdom isn't what separates us from nature. It is the exact thing keeping nature alive. First, it's just a retreat into the trees, then an instinct passed down through generations, and after that, a biological boundary that allows both worlds to exist. And speaking of the invisible instincts that shape our lives, how did our own ancestors navigate the world before modern technology? If you want to see how humans mastered time itself without a single clock, click here to watch How Did Ancient Humans Know When to Sleep Without Clocks?